demo and that the full game will meaningfully remix the map between runs, but I need to see that for myself before I vouch for this game. When I asked the Bandai representatives if they could clarify how the map would change between runs, or if there was more than one map, they were pretty cagey. They did talk about how swamps and volcanoes could drastically change things up, and the initial reveal trailer did seem to show a bit of this off, but until I see it for myself, it's unclear how meaningful these changes will be. That being said, I'm reasonably optimistic, and if I had to guess, I think the map will change a lot based off which Night Lord you select before each run. The other concern I have is just the variety in builds between runs. Due to the nature of most upgrades being small passive boosts, the way you start and end each run might be a little too similar. To put it another way, you know how in a game like Hades you get multiple gameplay defining upgrades that massively shift your build or playstyle? That part of the game is inherently less present in Night Rain. Sure, you'll find a weapon that gives plus 9% damage when two-handing, but in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay, having or not having that boost isn't going to change how you play. The same can be said about the whole leveling system. Yes, leveling up lets you deal more damage, but the way you play doesn't shift between level 1 and level 2. And as someone who's played a lot of action roguelikes, this is a notable absence. Now, to be fair, not all upgrades are like this. Stuff like the passive that gives you a lightning attack when you dodge, or the relic that gives you group healing are meaningful changes and can noticeably impact a run. So I really hope the full game has more of that. And thinking about this issue some more, we shouldn't ignore all the weapons and spells. Elden Ring might actually be a fantastic game to turn into a roguelike, if only for the variety of weapons and spells already built into the game. There are over 400 weapons and over 200 spells in Elden Ring, and the average Elden Ring player probably only used like less than 5% of them. But in a game where you have to use what you find and be kind of scrappy over short, repeated runs, suddenly there's an opportunity to engage with all these weapons and spells you probably overlooked. Plus, Elden Ring has a shitload of different enemies and bosses, so again, they have a deep well to draw from. And that's on top of them bringing back bosses from past Dark Souls games. Yes, this all relies entirely on recycled content, but that doesn't change the fact that it gives FromSoft a lot to work with in terms of variety. So yeah, maybe the leveling and passives being kind of boring is actually fine within the context of the rest of the game. Also, even if the player builds are limited when compared to other roguelikes, I think there's still a lot of potential for emergent gameplay when you factor in the rest of the gameplay systems, like the synergies between different character abilities, or unexpected hazards like bosses invading you in the middle of a fight. There's also a lot to be said about the map itself. It's deeply intertwined with all the other systems. Figuring out the best way to move around the map under time pressure is engaging, and simply where and when you get yourself into a fight can lead to different outcomes. So you like the game? I thought you weren't sure. Pine, you're confusing me. Let me put it like this. As a massive fan of FromSoft, Souls-likes, and the action roguelike genre, I'm in the dead center of the Venn diagram of the potential audience for this game. I had fun playing it, and I think, at worst, this game will be a fun diversion for a couple weekends with my friends. It has a lot going for it. I think the time pressure is compelling. I appreciate all the co-op shenanigans, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to fighting Dark Souls 2 bosses with Elden Ring's combat. Since this demo only showed off a small part of the game, I can't be sure about everything, but the potential is there. It'll depend on how some of the systems pan out in the full release, such as how the map changes. That being said, everyone doesn't share my tastes, and the audience for this game will be more niche than Elden Ring. I think people who aren't already fans of action roguelikes might not like it at all. On top of that, I do understand the cynicism toward the amount of recycled content a game like this has. So if that's off-putting to you, I get wanting to pass on this one. Truly, I'm not going to die on any hills defending FromSoft, and I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. The game comes out on May 30th, and it'll be $40 at launch. It's also going to launch with a $55 deluxe edition that'll come with DLC containing new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes. The DLC itself won't be available day one, but I think selling DLC at launch is something FromSoft hasn't done before. And while I don't personally have an issue with it, I do understand people who do. And I don't think it's a great look for FromSoft when they already have so much cynicism and distrust surrounding the game. I strongly suspect this will be a source of controversy. So yeah, Night Rain. It's a weird game, and I don't know how the general public is going to react to it. If I had to guess, I'd say it'll be reasonably well liked, but it's probably not going to blow anyone's mind. Like I said though, I think the worst case is I get to have fun with my friends for a couple weekends. So I'm looking forward to it even with all my reservations, and I would love to have the full game surprise me in ways I won't see coming. I also think that this is the type of game that's going to be way more fun with a group of friends rather than two random people you find in matchmaking. So I suspect that'll play into people's enjoyment as well. At the very least, I think it's one to keep an eye on, and I'm extremely curious about people who never tried Elden Ring having this be their first exposure to the franchise. The concept of that is hilarious to me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take it easy and look out for another video this month. Peace.
I'm gonna play that game. Looks too fun, really.
In Riga, Latvia, in 2019, and you can pull this on screen if you type in Taylor Swift, who are at every single Save Ukraine conference. Again, not even weighing in on the substance of it. You want distribution, you use it as a battering ram. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, even though I know that this is going to cause a lot of headlines. But here's a great example of this. The NATO Psychological Operations Planning Center in Riga, Latvia, in 2019, and you can pull this on screen if you type in Taylor Swift, NATO, or you type in, what was it, trained to share messaging, or just trained messaging, and this was a big news cycle. There was a huge controversy around it. A lot of people misreported it by closing the loops on things that I didn't say, but that are open questions about what really happened, which is this sort of Taylor Swift as an instrument statecraft. And the example I give here is, and if you pull this up on screen, if you just Jamie, you'll see this, and because I have it all underlined. This is a public YouTube right now on NATO's formal website, the Western Military Alliance. They set up this psychological operations strategic communications cell to do internet censorship and information operations out of after Crimea in Riga, Latvia. And in 2019, they held a conference there about how to use AI scanning technology to map out narrative distribution networks on social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatnot. And there's three people who are at this thing. One of them was 77th Brigade from British intelligence, who are presenting to NATO. One of them started their career in the Central Intelligence Agency, and one of them was put in the description as someone who was part of the Johns Hopkins School of International Affairs school, but that actually was announced on the panel, and according to their LinkedIn, was actually working at the time for Graphica, which does this internet censorship. They get $7 million from the Pentagon. They were incubated. They were formally incubated inside the Pentagon's Minerva Initiative, which is the Psychological Operations Research Center of the Pentagon. When the Pentagon wants to do psychological operations in Africa or in Central Asia, they turn to the thought leadership, the sort of policy planners who pitch ideas about, these tactics work. So, for example, one of the Minerva Initiative grants, not to Graphica, this group, but to others, because theirs was for Russiagate stuff, sort of psychological operations, stuff around fighting the hearts and minds war against Russia, but Graphica. But others in the cohort were how to secure citizen buy-in after a crisis event in order to make people trust their government against when we topple the government and people think it's a coup. I mean, basically how to get people to trust their government when they're skeptical of it. And then you turn around and see Graphica was partnered with the Atlantic Council as well as the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to censor the 2020 election, and partnered with our own NIH to censor COVID. But the fact is all three people on this panel were involved or had a career at one point in intelligence work, and specifically, at least with two of them, psychological operations. And on screen, and Jamie, if you can find it, I think you're gonna save us both a lot of headache, because everyone will just see it right there in red underline on a YouTube video everyone can pull up right now. Let me know if you're having trouble finding it. Just trained to spread, maybe, and I'll have this my time. But it literally has a pitch to NATO.
I'm not sure what I'm looking for exactly for that video. It's the 2019 NATO conference, right?
Yeah, if you just go to my X feed and you just hit the search bar and you type in Taylor Swift.
I'm on YouTube though. You said to go to YouTube.
No, my X feed is the best way to search it. But it has a picture on that slide deck where, again, this is psychological operations planners pitching to NATO, the Western world's military alliance. And the slide has a picture of Taylor Swift, and it basically says something like, and when the receipts are on the screen, you'll read it directly. It says, example of celebrities who can be trained to spread desired messaging. I think that was the exact phrase: trained to spread desired messaging. And the presenter goes over the drawbacks of this and how, what we need to decide some of the moral efficacy of this, but basically saying that Taylor Swift has worked in various things before that have been empirically shown to move the needle on government initiatives. For example, her Get Out the Vote, her Get Out the Vote work, Increase the Vote, her public health campaign stuff about buying there. Well, that video has a lot of cursor. Okay, yeah, pause right there. Okay, no, scroll up, right there. Pause right there. And if you see that goal, identify key actors to train and spread desired messaging. This is on NATO's. We pay for NATO. We paid for this to be pitched. Now, here's where some of this story got misreported. I don't know that anyone from NATO directly reached out to Taylor Swift or her campaign to do that. And if they did, this would not be formalized in a formal Pentagon grant or quid pro quo. But I should note, look at who the biggest sponsor of South by Southwest is in Texas now. It's the military. Go ahead and look up the scandal if you want about South by Southwest Pentagon funding. They've taken over the music industry because it's the hearts and minds work. okay, well, I guess that just happened in 2024. Let's see. If you go to, okay, so this has caused so much problems for the past couple of years that I guess they're now reforming this. But if you run a Boolean search for before 2024, you'll see this. But basically, the Pentagon, or if you scroll down, maybe it might be right there. So it caused this big boycott because the Pentagon, in tandem with this music diplomacy program and these U.S. aid backing of these things. Okay, well that's a U.S. Army in Palestine one, but you'll see the numbers on this. Basically, the Pentagon moves into this, and just like they were, giving Dua Lipa the awards, just like they're working with Pussy Riot, just like they have 22. In fact, you can look this up if you want. The State Department Music Diplomacy Program, 22 rappers, hip hop. You'll see, again, these people become network nodes. They become assets to play with, and an incredible example of this that I hesitate to discuss here because I know that the organization that these documents leaked from is contesting, these documents. But there's evidence to suggest the same play around recruiting the hip hop artists in Cuba and here you go. Breakdancing news: diplomacy meets hip hop as 22 artists visit the U.S. Okay. This is the U.S. State Department. We are paying to recruit them as assets. So when they go and look at the country list, if you want, look how far and wide this is to the edges of the earth. Mongolia, Cameroon. There's a whole thing here. But basically, it was protest rock. It was protest rap in Cuba for that USAID operation. It was protest rap. There's language, for example, in this gray zone report around Bangladesh, and I'll leave it to the current fight, between them and the National Endowment for Democracy about the nature of those documents. But those documents that the Gray Zone published have 2 rap songs in Bangladesh that have lines like they were designed to inspire anti-government sentiment and to promote street protests and political reform. I mean, literally writing rap albums to get people to take to the streets and pull off the exact riot that the State Department wants to destabilize the country. And music penetrates. I mean, they got really attached to this during the Cold War and in the 1980s because it's and in fact, in those documents, they talk about how sponsoring individual artists is actually sometimes a lot more effective because they do art and activism. While they're putting on these festivals, they're promoting an agenda at the festivals. While they are putting these, songs on radio distribution and supercharging, their brand, those songs have themes and messages about taking down authoritarian governments, and the people got to rise up, and you have to represent the will of the people. We have to end poverty. And then they'll make the argument it's the government's fault that there's poverty. We have to end racial or gender inequality, and then the State Department or USAID will be working through its demographic segmentation with those exact groups. This is another reason we've been pumping up these feminist groups and these LGBT groups. If you want, for example, you can pull up the WikiLeaks CIA Red Cell memo that showed how the CIA pitched to the State Department during the Afghanistan war that the best way to shore up additional funds from European parliaments is to transition states' media octopus messaging from a national security predicate for the war to a feminism and a women's empowerment one because of field work and polling from the Central Intelligence Agency around Europe showed that European parliaments and voting demographics said on surveys that they were more willing to give money or wanted to give more money from their own government coffers, their own taxpayer funds, to the war in Afghanistan if it was about stopping repression against women or if it was about giving women more rights in the society and whatnot. And so that wasn't because the CIA loves feminism now. This was a cold, calculated instrument of statecraft to shift the messaging and then also to work with these exact groups who have that cleavage point axe to grind against their country as part of the mobilizations. This is how you see a lot of these women's marches and women's protests, or you see a lot of these sort of protected class ones, because that also gets you the human rights, predicate to add sanctions and other, protected speech measures. Like this is why the State Department pushed Facebook to put hate speech provisions in place to stop hate speech against the Rohingya.
One of the things that's come up that has been talked about quite a bit over the last couple of years is that the government had some sort of an influence on the emergence of gangster rap and the promotion of it. Mm-hmm. What do you know about that?
I don't have a good record, in the 80s and 90s. There's a lot of strange things there, and I want to tell you what I really feel. It is highly controversial, though, and I'm not sure with everything else that we're covering and some of the other things that I'd like to be able to just hit before the conversation concludes about USAID's control and influence over prosecutors, and an example in Brazil, since I know that a lot of people in Brazil.
I definitely want to get to Brazil.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in a lot of trouble if I say this. when you read that National Endowment for Democracy, like, oh, we didn't do the Poland one. Can we circle back to this in 1 second before?
Yes.
Just because this really is an appropriate international incident to talk about this here. If you go to my X feed and you just type in search Poland or the word PIS as a one-off, or you can just scroll down, you'll see I re-upped it earlier this morning. You're going to see the National Endowment for Democracy's in-house journal called the Journal of Democracy. Again, the NED is this CIA front group. The New York Times reported the CIA gets a copy of every grant that they make. Their own founders say that that the CIA got in trouble for sponsoring pro-democracy groups around the world in the 1960s, and that's why we don't do it anymore, and that's why the National Endowment was created, basically to take the baton from the CIA during that transition between Carter anti-CIA and Reagan pro-CIA. This was the compromise between left and right, and that's why they have two political cores, IRI and NDI. But can you pull that back up? Okay. USAID's partner and operations arm, National Endowment for Democracy, has been specifically demanding Donald Tusk's government in Poland must find ways to arrest high-ranking members of the PIS party in order to, quote, stamp out populism. They wrote this the first month in office. So, and again, you'll see this is responding to someone facing 3 years for blacklisting. Now, let's click on this. And again, we pay, as taxpayers, for the production of National Endowment for Democracy's in-house journal, the Journal of Democracy. So, whoa. Can you zoom out? Just zoom out a little bit? I want you to see this. Yeah, perfect. How to dismantle a liberal democracy. So again, NATO was at war with the PIS party. They wanted more cooperation on security, on economic issues, whole other can of worms. They wanted Donald Tusk, the pro-EU, super pro-NATO candidate to win. He wins. The month he takes office, this is December 2023, National Endowment for Democracy, the CIA publishes this think piece, How to Dismantle in a Liberal Democracy. And again, I think formally, what's published here is supposed to, not technically, it's published in the NED publication. Doesn't mean it's NED foreign policy, but this is what they're publishing and you're paying for. So they're saying, listen, it's not an autocracy in Poland. Unfortunately, we can't call it a dictator like Putin or the CCP. It's democracy because the people voted for it and they won fair and square, but it's illiberal democracy because the democratic institutions, are not having their way. But here's what it says. Poland may be setting on its first steps in, quote, stamping out populism and holding those responsible for the worst violations of rule of law. That means the criminal justice system. Now get to the next one. Next slide. Poland's new government must, therefore, do more than just return to liberal democracy. It must address transitional justice, the same thing, which is all over every USAID operation. It has to arrest the people from the government we just transitioned from. Prime Minister Tusk and his coalition must, again, not should, not maybe should consider, maybe if there's something there, must stabilize the political system, ensure the reign against losing in the next election, to ensure that populism does not return in the next election. Wow. Donald Trump is a populist president. Bolsonaro is a populist president. Marine Le Pen is populist in France. Matteo Salvini is populist in Italy. The Vox Party is This is State Department and USAID policy everywhere, and this is part of the can of worms that's going to have to be unwoven here. But this is a direct order that in order to make sure you win the next election, and we don't need to keep funding you or lending our soft power apparatus to prop you up, arrest these people so they can't run against you again. Go to the next one. Can you zoom out? It's not just telling them that you must do it if you want to get USAID support, like the Ukraine Burisma loan type thing. But here's what it says. The new government should therefore focus attention on whether and how suspected criminals can be punished. At present, there are a number of cases that should be tried immediately. The chutzpah, the frigging chutzpah. This is a foreign, as far as the Polish people are concerned, this is a foreign government. It's foreign CIA front apparatus imploring their own elected government about which citizens there that they need to arrest those citizens, and even giving them the list of targets. Imagine if the Russian Ministry of Affairs said not only do you have to, arrest the remnants of the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden campaign, but we're giving you the list of target names. Here's who Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, must file criminal indictments against. This is an international incident. And again, technically, I believe what's published here they're not supposed to be, does not represent, it's like retweets are not endorsements, but you're paying for this organization, you're paying for this journal, and this is what they're publishing as a command to a foreign country. This was a Trump ally, by the way, the PIS party, which is another part of this. NED is doing a boomerang attack. By preventing PIS's popularity in Poland, they do a boomerang attack against the foreign policy international coalition that Trump has. So here are the cases. These include the 2015 appointment of judges. So arresting people for appointing judges. Here's another one. To arrange a supposedly unconstitutional presidential election by mail-in voting during the pandemic. WTF? We hate mail. It was practically a crime to not support mail-in voting with the National Endowment for Democracy here, but over there, they're saying it's a crime to have done it. And then
arrange a supposedly unconstitutional presidential election by mail-in voting during the pandemic. Wow.
Yes, and again, we can get all into this USAID NED rabbit's nest and all the domestic entanglements of all it. And also the 2023 visa scandal. Oh, yeah. Like this is the same thing they do. Have you ever seen Alejandro Mayorkas's visa scandal from when he was in the Obama DHS and he was the deputy there? You can pull this up on Google. I believe it's 2015. Or the guy who was our head of DHS, which is the domestic interplay with all these foreign blob organizations, was busted by his own inspector general in doing fast pass, no look expedited visas for Obama political donors and not putting it through the process, and the visa scandals are all over this. It was John Brennan as CIA station chief, by the way, in Saudi Arabia, in the run up to 9/11, who together with the U.S. consulate issued the visas to 15 of the 19 9/11 hijackers. That was our visas. Now, look, there were only 11 of the 19 were Saudis. They were actually giving Saudi visas to non-Saudis. And 15 of the 19, you can read all about this in the guy who ran the visa desk for that U.S. consulate is J. Michael Springman. He wrote a book called Visas for Terrorists, where he goes over how the whole thing was done. But wait, I'm not done. There's one more. Can you on that? Can you pull up the fourth thing, because it's a doozy. So go to the next one. These are just illustrative cases, and maybe just the tip of the iceberg of who our CIA front group, our USAID operations arm, is saying must be done. Naturally, the leader of the Law and Justice Party himself, the democratically elected president. Hey, does what happened to Donald Trump now, after the transitional justice that happened when Biden's Justice Department took power, starting to make a little bit more sense now? Should be held responsible. But legally proving allegations against him will likely be difficult. Damn, the problem is we don't have a case. We want to arrest him, but we actually don't really have anything good to get him on. So let's get all his lieutenants. And again, the objective, pacification, stability. You don't need to worry about them winning the next election. Populism as a political possibility in Poland will be stamped out because the intelligence networks and the money arm of USAID and the corrupted and warped prosecutors are all on the take.
Jesus.
By the way, multiply this problem basically in every country on earth, because we can get to a dozen of these. Here's a fun. Can I do a fun exercise real quick? Go to google.com and just, I mentioned this exercise before, and just literally, we're just going to go maybe 5-6 pages and just read what pops up. And I haven't even fully done this exercise. I'm so confident in what I'm about to say that we can do it live. Go to Google and type in USAID and then, again, Boolean quotes, the phrase, quote, judicial reform. And I can also show you, I've showed something next to you. Okay, all right. So here you go. Let's just go through a list of countries that we are seizing the judiciary. We are influencing the judges, the courts, the legal system, the criminal justice system, the prosecutors. Okay, let's just start at the top. Okay, so what is that country? Click on that link for a second, then go back. In the Project in the Republic. What republic is that? Okay, Serbia. Oh, what do you know? We're back to Dua Lipa. Can't stop now. All right. So that Atlantic Council Distinguished Leadership Award is starting to make a little bit more sense now. There's an in-process attempt to basically bribe and co-opt the very same criminal justice system that our state-sponsored musical performers, I shouldn't say sponsor, our state-awarded ones are calling to take action against. Okay, let's look at what's the next one.
This one didn't come up. They gave me a blank page. Their website's down. I don't know.
Okay, for advancing EU integration, can we just see the country name in number 2?
Really didn't.
Okay, EU integration. That's like, for example, they want to fold these, the Ukraine into the EU, right? There's been a big thing about this. Join the market, to also join NATO. That's what this is. How do we get the criminal justice system on board, with basically criminalizing opposition to it? Okay, and we can keep scrolling down. We're just going to do this for like 4 or 5 pages. I just want to, like literally every single one of these is a government program. Okay, so that one above was DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, how we are taking over the court systems in Congo. All right, go on to the next page or here. Okay, next page. Okay. So let's see here. Okay, more on Congo. Okay, Uzbekistan. We're doing this in Uzbekistan. Albania. We're doing it in Albania. Keeps going down here. Let's see. El Salvador. We were doing it in El Salvador. This is one of the reasons you can imagine Bukele was the first one on X to say, oh my God, there's no more renter rights in El Salvador anymore. And why was USAID so opposed to what we were doing, getting rid of the drug networks? Okay, wow. Here's for Ukraine. Here's for really? Central America. Here's more for Serbia. Here's for Georgia. This is stock standard doctrine. It's the same USAID Truman Show everywhere we go. This thing has been dialed in for 60 years. And that's why I say it's going to take 50 years to untangle this, because you're going to run into political headwinds the whole time. You don't think you're going to have money flowing back to, by the way, they're going to go straight to their partners in Europe and around the world to do top-up funding for what they lose from USAID. For example, they might go to the European Endowment for Democracy. They might go. The EU may have to start making funds to these U.S. anti-Trump networks. They may have to tap into their allies in China or their allies in other Central American or South American governments. But mark my words, that USAID Truman Show, that joint, these censors in exile, these, regime changers in exile right now are going to glob on to every international ally they humanly can. They will be pressurizing the United Nations. They'll be pressurizing multilateral organizations like NATO, the EU, and even some of these economic development pacts to use the critical components they have there, and sometimes dominant spot they have there, to weaponize those assets. And that gets back to this sort of EU fight. But I can pause and move to Brazil for a minute.
Pause. I have to pee.
Okay.
When I come back, rap music, Brazil.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. All right, we're back.
Yeah.
So first, hip hop.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that you think you're going to get in trouble for.
Oh, you're going to make me do this?
Well, you already teased it.
I think it was the 2009 National Endowment for Democracy Cuba Rap Journal of Democracy article that I believe was co-authored by NED's founder, Carl Gershman, who openly said that NED does what the CIA used to do, that they effectively took the baton from it. And again, the CIA has copies, according to the Washington Post and New York Times, of every grant NED makes. When you look at the analysis, the in-house analysis done by NED there, that there was this dense interplay between the Afro-Cuban population and the drug networks in Cuba. And then you look at the role of hip-hop and drug culture in retailing what is wholesaled in, obviously, USAID, CIA, Pentagon, narco networks. Like, for example, we talked about the Mujahideen narco network. They even set up a CIA bank right there to back it. We did the same thing in 1960. USAID set up in 1961. At the very moment, 2 weeks before USAID was created, JFK awarded the Green Beret to the Special Forces. Just 2 weeks before that. Then he creates that was October 1961. November 1961, he creates USAID. December 1961, 1 month after, he launches Operation Pincushion in Laos for the U.S. Special Forces to train and recruit hillside guerrillas in Laos, who are primarily funded by the drug networks that they sit on in the Golden Triangle. They sat on the opium of the Golden Triangle, and the way they financed their own guerrilla war, CIA-backed war, and this is all well known. Ving Pao was the commander there of the CIA mercenary rebel forces there. This is 1961 to 1967 in this period that I'm talking about. Special forces go over there to recruit these hillside guerrillas. They form an army. Ving Pao is made the head of it. This is going to connect to the rap thing in a sec. Ving Pao was financing the CIA's mercenary army by retailing the opium from Laos into these networks in Southeast Asia, like these CI proprietary banks, like everyone can look up Nugan Hand Bank or Castle Bank and Trust, these CI banks that were set up to launder basically drug proceeds. And they all got in a lot of trouble for this a few decades ago. Now, the problem was they couldn't sell enough because they were a scrappy little upstart group of hillside guerrillas. So what did USAID do in 1967? This is the 1960s, how long this has been going on. So they were recruited by special forces. They were managed by the Central Intelligence Agency. USAID provided the financing, and this is all according to and in the Senate testimony of Professor Alfred McCoy. This is his book called The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia. He testified from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in 1972. He detailed all this in his book. But USAID financially provided the financial assistance for Ving Pao and his narco terrorist network to purchase 2 airplanes from 2 CIA proprietary companies. One of them was Air America. Another one was Continental Air Services. Both of these have been revealed in subsequent years to be CIA proprietary airlines. So the CIA commander, the commander of the CIA rebel army, buys 2 planes from 2 CIA airlines and then uses them to traffic and retail the drugs by selling them to the market in Vietnam, where we had special forces boots on the ground. So basically it was wholesaled by the CIA in that case. And then it was the logistics for that network were provided by USAID. And then it was retailed to poor, unsuspecting souls all over Southeast Asia. Play the same game in the Golden Crescent with Afghanistan. Play the same game with the cocaine trade in its route from Peru and Bolivia up into Colombia and then up into the distribution networks in Miami, Los Angeles, Chicago, you name it. When you start having organized crime and drugs, as the front end that retails the products and services that are wholesaled and part of a intelligence or military operation, you can't sell those drugs by having someone with a Department of Defense ID badge on the street corner, on 187th and Broadway. There are retail networks for that, and that is the role of many of these drug mule and organized crime networks all over the world. And I have serious concerns about networks in Chicago. I mean, Gary Webb obviously wrote all about this in Dark Alliance, and there's all sorts of fantastic books on all of this if you want to read more, like Operation Gladio by Paul Williams. I mean, there's so much in this field, but the role of narcotics is in financing black budget military covert operations in every major place they spring. Is a black box that is not my crusade. I frankly, again, I wish we didn't even go here but I do feel like you do need to have a side-eye glimpse into some of these worlds to understand internet censorship, because you are going to find USAID NGOs. If Bukele had not done the radical reforms that he had, the internet would have been completely censored by USAID and the State Department in order to rig hearts and minds against him, because they would want to stop him from cleaning out these drug gangs. He would stop him from cleaning up the crime. You're going to see the same thing about fact checkers in Pakistan, and for example, according to the Gray Zone report on USAID and NED in Bangladesh, and in fact, this is actually, I believe, on the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan's U.S. Embassy in Pakistan's website, the Countering Misinformation Training Seminar they had with the guy who's now the top foreign advisor in Pakistan, and they brought in the executive director of PolitiFact, flew him all the way out to the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan to train journalists about how to counter misinformation. These same journalist training seminars we're seeing Internews do, we see SEPs do, we see the Atlantic Council do, but I come back to the U.S. Institute for Peace on a live URL as we speak, not even 2 years ago, made an impassioned plea to the Taliban to keep 95% of the world's heroin flowing. You have to explain that to the American people. That is the State Department's policy. If U.S. Institute for Peace is not going to go rogue against the State Department foreign policy there, because they're funded by the State Department. You see the same thing with these ISIS terrorist drug narco networks. Anyone remember the WikiLeaks email, Jake Sullivan to Hillary Clinton while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State? ISIS is on our side in Syria. Well, that means the more of those poppy crops that get retailed off to ISIS networks, the more powerful and well-financed they are, the more they can pay their soldiers or stop their soldiers from defecting, from being mercenaries. And lo and behold, that same network just toppled the Syrian government. And I should note, structuring through USAID is the sauce to this, because there is a sitting tweet from the U.S. Embassy in Syria from 2017 when Trump was wiping out ISIS that put a $10 million bounty on the head of Mohammed al-Jilani, the commander of those forces, the current basically head of state in the interim government in Syria. There was a $10 million bounty on his head under Trump. They made the argument that his HTS group was an al-Qaeda spinoff and no al-Qaeda allowed. Well, according to his own military generals, who said this openly in mainstream media after the fact, we were constantly playing shell games with the numbers to hide the troop activity and what we were doing on the ground in Syria and the broader region. If you don't need a presidential finding to finance a terrorist group or a paramilitary group, it's too dirty for CIA. President won't approve. Run it through USAID.
And what does this have to do with hip hop?
Well, you have these narco networks, like, for example, like what I was saying about the USAID bought the airplanes for the CIA for the wholesalers to move it to the retailers. And when you have this intersection between hip hop and the drug economy, hip hop popularizing it, you have a lot of these rappers who've said, we were told by our promoters or our managers to lean into that stuff. You have the whole organized crime gang. I'll give you an example. This is in Gary Webb's Dark Alliance, where he goes through this network from basically the CIA playing and the Defense Department playing a leading role in propping up these narcotics trades in South America, because they were pumping up right-wing death squads and right-wing paramilitary narco gang networks that were violent and effectively shut down left-wing Marxist theology movements who were considered to be pro-Soviet. This is how you have a lot of this, for example, with Iran-Contra and the Reagan years. So he makes a very compelling case about the role of the U.S. intelligence community at the wholesale level in Peru and Bolivia, and at the actual processing in Colombia, and then the movement and transport to the gangs in Los Angeles and Miami and Chicago and the like. And that wholesale movement effectively goes from Langley / Crystal City in DC, Virginia, to a sort of Hispanic population in South America, into other into gangs that are retailing it into these Compton gangs, into these these Chicago and Miami and New York ones. You have a culture of drug use that creates a market for selling the proceeds, so that drugs can be turned into cash, which can then be used to purchase guns. And when you see this just liquid seamlessness there, and then I don't want to tax Jamie too much, but this gray zone report in Bangladesh has specific language with the National Endowment for Democracy and one of its subarms making explicit grants to Bangladeshi rap groups for the explicit purpose of getting people to take to the streets in street riots and protest movements, and to undermine public faith and public confidence and favorable sentiment for the then in power Bangladeshi government. They were targeting the youth movements. Remember when we pulled up the 22 hip hop artists on screen, and the whole thing was about youth mobilization? These people formed the front end of the of the destabilization.
So your argument is essentially that this game plan is ubiquitous, and that this game plan is done in the United States too, to promote drug use and drug selling, which they profit off of.
I'm not even going that far. What I'm saying is there's a useful role around of music and other artistic and cultural ventures for creating a market for something that helps U.S. statecraft. For example, this was the major scandal. The head of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Deutsch, had to travel to Compton in 1997, I believe that was the year, in order to plead with the black population there that what had happened with the CIA's role in the drug trade was a sort of occasional one-off accident, wasn't authorized, wasn't supposed to happen. But the fact is those narco networks supported the Nicaraguan Contra movement. You needed a market to sell it. And those were inner city, urban populations in Los Angeles that were, they weren't the ones growing the cocaine. That was grown in Peru and Bolivia, and then it was processed in Colombia, and then it was,
That's all that stuff that Michael Rupert exposed.
Yeah, there's been a million, and it's everywhere you look, and it's not just South and then again, I don't want to, this stuff is all, to me, just interesting. I don't have a hard opinion on it. I almost don't want to take away from so much of the important factual stuff where I have the receipts on screen. But what I'm saying is you are going to see resistance from very strange pockets as you do this disentangling process. How many people knew that an arm of the State Department right next door to it that gets all of its money from the State Department, who sets the foreign policy, is telling the Taliban to keep the drug networks open? Or that same arm is going after Bukele when he tries to arrest the drug criminals in El Salvador, which, by the way, was the most intense of these narco right-wing death squads during the Cold War. And we pump up every cultural vector we can. Again, watch Taking Down a Dictator, that documentary, and look at the role of music in the State Department's eyes in being able to galvanize street protest movements, gets everyone on the street united, gets everyone listening to the same thing. They're all sort of aligned like a magnet. Even look at places like the Azov Battalion and how they sort of grew out of this black metal rap, black metal music, coalition, with highly extremist lyrics and whatnot in Ukraine. The same sort of extremist lyrics you saw in the Bangladeshi rap songs, or the call to take to the streets in the Cuban ones. And again, this has been going on a long time. Look at the lyrics of a Pussy Riot song, and remember this: they literally are standing at the Secretary of State's podium, with arm in arm with the U.S. State Department, while so everyone can look up CIA's role in rock and whatnot. There's great Guardian articles about all this as well. But it's more to say, coming back to this USA Truman Show, that everything and anything can be an instrument of statecraft, whether that's the prosecutors, the universities, the unions, the media, the social media, arts, dance. This is where you get these transgender dance festivals and this demographic segmentation, to see who hates the government. Well, if the government is cracking down on transgenderism, or is not kind to it, or they feel like they want more rights, that's a useful demographic as a cleavage point for the U.S. State Department to capacity build, flow money to, so that they can be used as a battering ram. And I'm not endorsing that, but that is just why we work.
I understand what you're saying. Okay, we're running out of time, so let's get to Brazil.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jamie, I sent you a bunch of these, screenshots that my foundation is going to be publishing in our final report, but I wanted to just go through these here because we've been talking about the role of the criminal justice system more than anything. Media is rigged. Okay, it's a headline. It's a reputational smudge. It can cost you your job. When the criminal justice system and the judges are rigged and the prosecutors are rigged, you don't even have a country anymore because they can arrest the president. They can arrest the politicians. And it's a shortcut to control over the whole side. And we went through examples with Ukraine, Burisma, Serbia. We went through that whole exercise. But Jamie, if you can pull on screen, we can just go through the text messages. This will be the last thing of USAID's role with the judiciary in Brazil, and specifically against Bolsonaro, who is targeted by these anti-misinformation
populist
actions.
President,
populist right-wing. They called him the Trump of the tropics. Same thing, part of that same international coalition. Let me know if you have any trouble. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe if you start with the first one, actually.
So I think this is it, unless I'm in the wrong way.
Well, no. Okay. Maybe scroll down.
Hold on.
Do you see the ones where you have the lead judge
leaking your phone number too? Because if I put the wrong thing on the screen, your phone number's going to show.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay. So how about just the pictures with the pan? Okay, here you go. So yeah, we start with that one right there. That image right there. Does that guy look familiar? This is the Lord. Actually, he actually looks kind of like a mixture of both of us, Joe. It's kind of funny. But this is the man that they call the Lord Voldemort Judge of Brazil. This is the head of the TSE, the censorship court, which is the subgroup of their Supreme Court. And here you see a seminar that he is being trained in. Does that name ring a bell? CEPS? How many hours have you and I now spent talking about the CEPS program, the USAID program that explicitly set its job to get foreign countries and foreign courts to pass censorship laws? This is USAID funded and implemented by the National Endowment for Democracy. This is CEPS.org. But this gets much. If you go back to the panel, I'll show you more on this. All right, there you go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here's another one. CEP's core partner, IFES, this is basically the election strengthening, teaming up directly with Brazil's TSE court. That is the censorship court that seized X's, that shut down X, and that seized Starlink's assets, and that effectively criminalized the speech of virtually any significant pro-Bolsonaro voice in Brazil. This is our USAID network doing the training, doing the networking. And wait, if you go back, I'm just going to show a couple more of these. Okay. This is Internews. Internews, who we covered, $500 million from USAID every single year in Brazil, doing training seminars for how to flag pro-Bolsonaro disinformation. I can go on and on. I got layers of all these different judges and the pitches to the prosecutors to arrest it. The whole thing was a USAID Truman Show taking over the judiciary, or at least substantially influencing and tilted to take out their political enemy, Bolsonaro, the whole way down.
And X is still banned in Brazil.
No, I believe X, entered into compliance by taking certain actions.
So they have to censor.
Yes, I believe they're still subject to the edicts of the court. Jesus. I should note.
Oh, say lift ban October 8th.
Yeah.
After it pays a $5 million fine.
Right. And by the way, Rumble,
the ban is in place essentially to keep Bolsonaro from regaining power.
Well, right. Well, they wanted to make sure that, again, it's the same thing with Poland. They want to achieve stability, democratic stability, so that he can't rise hugely popular right now. It was a razor close election. And remember, we pull a lot of tricks in order, around that. And you're going to find a lot more of that when you look into the role of unions like the National Endowment for Democracy Solidarity Center, and the whole suite there. Remember, we literally pulled favors with Taiwan. This is reported in the Financial Times in order to get them the semiconductor chips to build the voting machines against Bolsonaro's wishes. The head of the CIA went down and threatened him. Bill Burns did. The head of the Pentagon went down and you met with the Army to tell them, you have to trust the result of the election. This is the head, Lloyd Austin, the head of the Pentagon. We're saying the head of the CIA, the head of the military, we're running semiconductor chips just so that they can make voting machines that the elected head of state doesn't want. And then, we're funding their, workers' movements through.
So we have a very specific outcome that we want.
Yes.
And then we also make sure that they use voting machines that we provide.
I'm not even weighing into the voting machine issue, except to say that it's very strange that we would divert semiconductor supplies bound for the U.S. during a critical shortage and give them to a foreign government to put in voting machines that the elected head of state doesn't want. That's a very curious thing. You can read about all the inside details of that published in the Financial Times and other places.
Jesus. It's also daunting. It's so overwhelming. How do you sleep?
No, mostly I don't. But we have an opportunity. We've already done more than anyone has ever done. No foreign-facing government agent, no cog in the wheel of this dirty tricks apparatus has ever had 99.8% of the workforce laid off, the name taken off the building from a month in terms of the lightning speed of it. But I feel a sense of hope and optimism and a kind of spiritual fulfillment, if that's too big a phrase to say. But you don't see me happy or doing cartwheels, or it doesn't really show on my face because I know the size, the scale and the duration of this fight is going to continue for the rest of my lifetime. And so this is not a sprint period. We're running fast, but it's a marathon the whole way.
What's unbelievably baffling to me is the complete absence of the coverage of all these things that should be very concerning in mainstream media. Complete absence. All the discussion, the negative anti-Trump discussion about USAID shutting down is all the good that it does. And then also, you're going to get access to people's private data. That's all you're hearing. You're hearing the gaslighting spin is those two things.
Right, but every single one of those, people need to understand the category. They talk about public health and all the lives and how many more people are going to have, AIDS and HIV. In 2014, USAID was busted running a covert operation where, according to their own, people who were involved in the operation, they set up an HIV prevention program in foreign countries because it would be the perfect excuse, because counterintelligence would never think that the HIV clinics were the place that they were using as key nodes in the regime change network. How many other facilities they were caught there? How many others? But in every single one of those, it's dual purpose, because the fundamental reason you do this out of USAID is to dupe people, and this puts our oversight bodies in a difficult spot. Let's just say we're funding transgender dance festivals in some country because turns out they really dislike a government that we consider authoritarian. And so you could actually see a sort of, I don't know the situation in Venezuela, but let's just say that the Trump administration, who's been at war with Maduro and wants to pursue a policy of turning over that government, and it just so happens that that government is persecuting the transgender population, and the transgender population, if they could just be built up more, would be able to convert more hearts and minds to vote against Maduro. Well, you could see a sort of, if I may say, again, I'm not saying this should be done. I'm just saying you could see a sort of MAGA foreign policy explanation for funding transgender dance festivals in Venezuela if that's what the baseline assessment reveals. The problem is American people are never going to be allowed to know about it, because imagine the Senate Oversight Committee. Why are we funding these transgender dance festivals in Venezuela? Oh, actually, because we're running a lie there. By the way, everyone in Venezuela can watch this live hearing. The whole thing is actually a carefully constructed lie, because we're cynically exploiting the transgender people to serve as battering rams against the head of state we want to overthrow, but we've not declared that publicly. I mean, we're back to plausible deniability.
Jesus. This is a lot. I think it's probably good to end right here.
Okay.
But thank you, Mike. Thank you for everything. Thanks for being you. Like, I don't think a lot of people would chase this down like this. And I know this is a lot of weight. It's quite a burden that you're carrying. But I think you're being vindicated in like a scale that I've never seen before. It's pretty impressive. And all the stuff that you were talking about before all these documents were exposed, before the Doge went into USAID, you were dead right about all of it.
Thank you. And again, I don't want to get you in trouble with this stuff. Some of the topics that we talked about, like the drug stuff and the rap stuff and the, some of the terrorism stuff is not my primary focus. I'm not making hard facial claims there. I don't care about the Taylor Swift thing. It's frankly, it's just fascinating that you would see that on a native, this is, what I care about is what we talked about with its control over media, its control over prosecutors, its control over social media, and pushing social media censorship and these sorts of things that that we have a once in a lifetime chance to reform. And I want to thank you and express my personal gratitude for having these difficult and I'm sure taxing conversations to crack it all open.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
This one is so freaking hard to kill. Oh, shit. This one was insane.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Bullshit. I never got it until this year, but that's what they say.
That's what they say. You get it within a couple of years, you get it, and then all of a sudden, you got it.
Yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
the fuck they are, but it's not bad.
I could hear it the other day. I heard it.
Stuffiness?
Yeah, I heard you
Yeah, I had
like-
it for like 4 days. I've had stuffiness.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, when I work out, I feel great. The way I can really tell, like, the way I judge whether or not I should even work out is when I get in the sauna, in the cold plunge. If I feel tired and weak when I'm in there,
Then
then
you
I know
know.
something's going on. It's not as simple as allergies.
So I thought for 10 years I had the Austin allergy. For 10 years. It was so bad. I go out to dinner, even when we moved out to Fredericksburg, we come into Austin. I thought it was Austin. I'm serious. I was like, oh, Austin is giving me this. We go out to dinner, start eating, and then my nose, my eyes, everything just, and I have to always excuse myself, always have to have tissues in my back pocket. Then I got my teeth done, which we talked about, I think, the last time I was here. And Maverick, my periodontist, he did one of these 360 MRIs. He says, you know, man, you've got some low-level infection here. And that could be responsible for a whole bunch of stuff. Now, I'd had hearing aids for 5 years. So when he did the initial extraction, I think I took 1 or 2 shows off, and then I went back in the studio, put my headphones on, and I'm like, whoa, I thought I'd hit something, a volume knob or something. Came back.
Your hearing came back.
Because this was infected, and it was basically clogging up my sinuses, and that was affecting the hearing. Yeah.
Jesus. Having
And
a mouth infection like that's very dangerous, isn't it?
people have no idea how important oral health is. It's really, really critical. And also, I feel better because, I'm not fighting infection continuously.
That's crazy. So how did it all start? Like, what was going on with your teeth that like made all these infections?
I had a bad start in life when I was 2 or 3. We were living in Uganda, and my parents would put me to sleep with a chocolate cookie. So I had kind of a bad start, and I had a lot of work. I had just tons of fillings on my baby teeth. Everything was messed up. Then I had the big outboard headgear, which really traumatized me for life. Taking that to school, it was like I was one of those guys. Oh yeah, it was bad. And about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I went to the dentist here in Austin, and he's like, we really got to start doing stuff. We got to start looking at repairing. And then this dentist started hitting on me and texting me, and I'm like,
great. Guy or girl?
Guy. Damn. like no. So, and I knew that there was a Pandora's box.
How
in there.
wild is that? Like, what a risky move.
It was so dumb. Like,
you're
why?
a married straight guy, and it's like, yeah, I think I can get him though.
He can be on our team.
That is such a man move. That's such a thing that men would do. It's so stupid.
He's like, I'm here with some buddies of mine, sending a picture.
Yeah, come on.
I got to start looking at repair. I went to the dentist here in Austin, and he's like, we really got to start doing stuff. We got to start looking at repairing. And then this dentist started hitting on me and texting me, and I'm like,
great. Guy or girl?
Guy.
Damn.
like no. So, and I knew that there was a Pandora's box.
How
in there.
wild is that? Like, what a risky move.
It was so dumb. Like,
you're
why?
a married straight guy, and it's like, yeah, I think I can get him though.
He can be on our team.
That is such a man move. That's such a thing that men would do. It's so stupid.
He's like, I'm here with some buddies of mine, sending a picture. I'm like, no. So
They're
I'm
all
like,
shirtless and fucking wearing cowboy hats.
Yeah, I'm not going back. I'm good. And then Tina and I, we got together. We moved out to Fredericksburg, and she's real big on preventative anything. Her car has the oil, everything on time, everything's all set, and her teeth, of course, are impeccable. And she's
That sounds like a good fit for you.
totally.
You need an organized lady.
I had a credit score of 350.
Oh, no.
And I didn't have credit card. I was just cash. I didn't care. I had cash flow. Everything's good. I don't care. She straightened me out. Oh yeah. Oh, big time. We
Disorganized men very much need organized women.
Yes.
You just can't have one that turns into your mom.
Oh no. That was my first wife, and
that
was
does
wrong.
happen
Yeah.
with some of them. Some of them, when you give them the reins and they start telling you what to do, all of a sudden, then it becomes very non-sexy.
I will say props to my first wife. She kept me. I was the height of my show business fame, MTV. She kept me out of trouble. I did not participate.
She was a good mommy.
She was a good mom, and she's a good mom to our daughter. So yeah, for sure.
Well, you change, they change. You need a different kind of a mom.
Things change. Things change. So then I went through it. Yeah, it was like, and that's also when I stopped smoking. Because Maverick called me up. He said, "Hey man, I'm going to be operating on you in a week. Could you do me a favor and stop putting fire in your mouth?" And I've been smoking weed and tobacco since I was 15, and I quit. At that moment, I haven't. I didn't ever. I vape like a crazy horse, but
Well, that's not good, is it?
well, that's a question.
This is you and I've gone over this, and we will go back to it.
It's a nicotine delivery device. Yes,
Right.
that's what it is.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, sure.
But so just cleaning out the infections, what was going on that was fucking up your hearing? It was like the whole area was inflamed?
Yeah, it's right by your sinuses, and so that everything's connected. If you hold your nose, you can hear.
Right.
You hear differently. So
Right.
whatever it was doing, and it literally just a couple days after he extracted extracted more than that, but after he extracted those teeth, it just came back. And I didn't have horrible hearing loss, but it was enough where I was sick of saying, "I'm sorry, darling. What'd you say? I'm sorry."
Right.
And at the moment you get to like, I didn't hear her. I'll ask her later. That's when I went, no, I got to get hearing aids. I don't want to. And it's one of the biggest reasons men get depressed is when they can't hear and they kind of withdraw, and it's
Really?
it's a real crisis. Yeah, anyone, you need to go. If you think, you just have your ears tested anyway. Why not? I mean, you get your eyes tested, get your ears tested, get your teeth taken care of.
So if they find out your ears are not good, do they ever check for infections?
No,
Because it seems like now you should get in the medical books.
Thank you. He's been writing a paper on this for this very reason, and it's only because he did the 360 MRI that he saw it, and he also knew what to look for. It's his expertise. You know, he's when I met this guy, I was like, he's young, he's like in his 30s. I'm like, so why did you choose this profession? He says, I like operating. I really love doing that stuff. I'm like, okay, you sound cool. And he turns out he's a pilot, you know, so we become friends. But yeah, he says people have no idea. And so he has been working on a paper to publish about this very thing. It's just not known. I talked about it on the podcast, and people from all over the world like, really, man? You know, I've been having hearing issues. Get an MRI. Get a 360 MRI of your head.
This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. The hiring process is stressful. There are so many different things to consider, and on top of it all, you need to get it done quickly. It's like when you're trying to find a decent contractor for a home renovation project or even a new primary care doctor. You don't want just anyone. You probably want a person who knows their shit and will take your concerns seriously, but also need to find them, like yesterday. If you're an employer struggling to find that perfect fit, I've got one word for you: ZipRecruiter. They work fast to find you great talent. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. They're so fast, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter find a quality candidate within the first day. That might be why hiring site employers prefer ZipRecruiter the most based on G2 ratings. They get the work done without wasting your time or money. So relax and let ZipRecruiter speed up your hiring. See for yourself. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan to try it right now for free. That's the same price as a genuine smile from a stranger, a picture-perfect sunset, or a cute dog running up to you and licking your hand. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. You know, it's an interesting subject because candy and sugar is really what caused all this horrible tooth decay in people. And the goofy fucking solution that someone came up with along the way was putting fluoride in the water, which is so goddamned insane that you're taking a neurotoxin and you're putting it in the water. But again, like I don't want to take even a political position on this. I just want to look at this. I want to look at this from a human lens. There's something that people do where even if something is obviously stupid, if it's a part of a system and there's enough air quotes experts that have endorsed this, regardless of the fact that we've seen time and time again throughout history that experts are compromised, you could have a court case for a murder and bring in experts that will tell you he definitely did it and experts that tell you he definitely didn't do it. So we know this for a fact. But still, people argue on the side of the experts. And I've seen this about fluoride, and it's so mind-boggling. There are conclusive studies that show a direct correlation between high levels of fluoride in the local water and lower IQs. And it's a neurotoxin. We know it's bad for you in large doses. And yet there are fucking people out there with college degrees who read the New York Times who think they're sensible people that will get angry if you want to remove this neurotoxin from water because look at all the strides it's done in preventing tooth decay. Yeah. And you just want to say, hey, man, fuck you. Well, this is stupid.
I went to dinner at Mitch's house. I call him.
I'm a little upset.
No, it's okay because we're sitting down. It's my wife, his wife. You know, he has one of those houses right on the airport with his plane rolls out of the garage, out of the hangar.
Oh, is that a touch?
Exactly. I paid for that. I paid for that hangar. And we're sitting down and we're having a good time. You know, we're talking about stuff. He says, so what do you think about fluoride? I said, should not be in the water. He's like, you're wrong. You know what? And this is only a couple of years ago. And now he's come back and he said, oh man, Did he
apologize?
Yeah, of course. This was drilled into my head. But what I understand is fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum production. And a lot of this, they had this fluoride waste product, basically, they needed to get rid of. And from what I understand, it was Alcoa, I could be wrong, but I think it was Alcoa who made these deals. And who knows how they set that up with the American Dental Association. And that's how fluoride got into our water. And we got this kind of psyop of it's good for you. I knew it was wrong in 2000, and there was a book that came out called Legacy of Ashes. It was written by a guy called Tim Weiner, who used to be New York Times. And it was all about the CIA. And it's a great book because my uncle is in it many times. Donald Gregg, he's still with us. He's 95 or 96. And he was really high up in the CIA. He was, part of OSS back in the day. And in it, it talks about how the agents would go in, fluoridate the enemy's camp water so they could go in at night and they were docile and they could pull them out and they could kind of attack them. And I said, Uncle Don, is this true? He says, yeah, pretty much how I remember it. I'm like, well, of course. So the neurotoxin has been used in actual warfare in the water.
To make people docile.
Docile.
And the argument is so dumb because, my friend Eddie Bravo had a great point. He said, when you get toothpaste, do you ever see toothpaste that says fluoride free? Why would they say that and advertise it?
Tom's.
If fluoride wasn't bad for you. Why would they do that? Like, why would that be a selling point? If we've always looked for fluoride in toothpaste, my whole life. Crest, oh, fluoride, got it. When you're going through the CVS and you're grabbing stuff and throwing it back. It's always fluoride. You're always looking for fluoride. That's what kills the fucking germ. I don't want cavities. I don't have to go to the dentist.
Yeah.
Give me that fluoride. But they're selling toothpaste without fluoride. Why is that? And the guy who was saying it to, like, had this look on his face, like he was trapped. He was just trapped. Like, so you don't think fluoride is good for you? It's like one of those things. Like, that's just what he just said. No, just brush your fucking teeth.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
As a kid, did you get those trays at the dentist? Do you remember those?
What are the trays?
It was, and it would be that. So we're gonna do fluoride treatment on you.
Oh, yeah, they did
and,
that.
And it was like it's fruity. You know, and this gunk would be dripping back in your throat.
Yeah,
you're gagging with this horrible. It's like that's not.
And you go to
that's not
school,
Hawaiian
you get
punch.
a D in English because you're fucking stupid.
Pretty much the story of my life, Joe.
Yeah, it's so bad. It's really bad for you, and it's not necessary. And we're being co-opted by something and someone. And I think we looked this up on the podcast, Jamie. Didn't it come out of there was some town in Texas, I believe, that had naturally fluoridated water, which occasionally, just
We have it in the hill
happens higher.
country. The water is definitely naturally fluoridated.
Yeah,
It's in the
there's
ground.
natural levels of different minerals, and
Yeah.
there's different stuff. And this one area had a fairly high natural level of fluoride, and these people had like great oral hygiene. Whether or not that was a convenient study that they pointed to, or a convenient case they pointed to make the argument to get rid of all that fluoride, there's like, you got to look many layers into all this kind of stuff, because they've been throwing fluoride in the water for how long, and how much money has been spent throwing fluoride in the water, and how many people have like built mansions and have fucking,
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz, they're tooling around them because they've been throwing fluoride in the water, and that's a deep system to try to untangle after 50, 60 years of doing
it's
this.
the petrochemical industry. That's where all our medicines come from. And I was watching the Grammys. And I don't really.
Why? What's wrong with you?
I know. Well, I usually watch for the Satan segment. I would say, okay, there it is. There's the Illuminati. There's
There's always one.
There's the. They didn't have one. They
That's
had
crazy.
beautiful women in
Maybe
nice
because
dresses
Trump
and
is
everything.
president. They're a little nervous.
No. Presidents are important for the culture.
It's very important for the Satan
But
people.
they're in trouble.
Yeah, you
they're
don't
in
have,
trouble.
like, a God
Jesus is
spirit,
making a
yeah.
comeback, man.
You can't-
They're in trouble
you gotta
there.
hide now. Go back into the
And-
basement of Comet Pizza.
And
Place that doesn't have a basement, by the way.
We're reliably informed. And I hadn't really watched network television a lot, and there's a lot of commercial breaks, but the first 10 all had a pharmaceutical product, which I'd never heard of, a name I can't remember, and side effects literally included death. I'm like, what is going on with this? And like, ask your doctor, I'm like, do I have this? Should I have this? Do I want this? I mean, is this going on with me? And people are all happy in the commercials. They're like, look, my skin looks good, and I'm happy, and I have a beautiful family. It's almost like we used to, sell cars. Now they're just selling the pharmaceuticals.
Well, that will be an interesting thing if RFK Jr. gets in place. If RFK Jr. gets in place and they stop this advertising on, we are one of 2 countries on earth that
New
allows,
Zealand,
New Zealand, and New Zealand's far more restricted than us. We should be really restrictive about this because advertising works. And there's advertising that doesn't bother me at all, like Chevrolet Corvette, boom, boom, one of those. It's okay, it's fine. But when it can give you bloody diarrhea and suicidal ideology,
Anal leakage.
yeah, and you're just fucked up in the head and you're depressed and like you don't know why, but now your zits are gone. Like, hey, slow down. That was not in that commercial with the lady dancing in the field with her child and the people at the picnic and they're all smiling and laughing and having a good time together.
Yeah.
That looked like fun. Like, where's that part?
Well, of course, they've tried all kinds of things to stop this, and First Amendment comes up, although we have stopped tobacco advertisements, and there's all kinds of things that have been done throughout the years. But what happened with television is all the money, I mean, really 60, 70, maybe 80% of all the advertising income is from pharmaceutical companies. That's why there's also no reporting. Like, we're not going to bite the hand that feeds us.
That's the real problem.
That's
the
right
real
there.
problem. The real problem is that these news organizations are not
Not just
independent.
news, everything.
Right, everything. They're not independent. Like even television shows. Like, could you imagine if, let's say, a network has a prominent news organization, and that news organization is very popular, and it's a big part of their ratings, and it's a reliable source of information for people that believe them, and they're sponsored by pharmaceutical drug companies, but then they also have a crime show on, and this crime show wants to do a thing about an evil guy who promotes a vaccine that winds up killing a bunch of people, and they hide the data, and then they arrest him at the end of the show. Like, no fucking way.
That's not getting made. No green light for you.
No. That's
not gonna happen.
No. You got to turn that guy into a meth dealer. That's a meth dealer now. Let's just do a couple of rewrites, simple rewrites of the script.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is a bad guy from Guatemala. Let's fucking. It's definitely not from here. He's definitely not from Moderna, and they definitely aren't working in conjunction with the government to develop this thing, and the government's profiting off of it. That's not real.
Well, I say that we're in the season of reveal. I've been saying this for about a year now, and it's really happening real quick with what we're uncovering and starting to understand. I haven't seen your talk with Mike Benz.
Dropped some fucking seeds yesterday. If we're in
Because
the
it's
season
true.
of flowers, he's blooming today because he was so nervous yesterday. Jamie was talking about it before. Like, he was making all these tweets like they're going to kill him. Probably, it's probably been discussed.
Well, I think it's way too far beyond. And I think, I look at Leave It to Beaver, I call her, who's the new press secretary. She's 27 years old.
Oh, yeah, she's good, though.
She's fantastic. She's younger than my daughters.
A gal. I don't think you should say Leave It to Beaver.
I'm sorry. That's how I remember her last name. All right, Caroline Leave It. I think it's Leave It. Thanks, Joe. Thank you. So
because we're old enough to remember when beaver was a vagina. Most kids are like, I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about.
Leave It to Beaver. What are
What
you
a
talking
dumb
about?
name for a vagina, a beaver. Because dudes didn't really have any derogatory names for dicks. It's just dick is the worst one. Like, your dick. Put your dick away, you fucking weirdo. You know what I mean? It was like this. But beaver.
Well, we only had pecker.
Yeah,
like,
but Pecker's kind of cute.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a
pecker.
Yeah, there's no like real bad names for dick other than dick.
But she comes out and she does this whole list of USAID, which is very little money. And I think our president is very smart. He's showing us things that enables people like Mike Benz and you and I to have these conversations about, because it's not ideological that USAID, which is not USAID. This is like one of these psyops right up top. Like Federal Express is not owned by the government. Federal Reserve is not owned by the government. USAID is the Agency for International Development, not aid. And we see on television, there goes another pallet onto the C-130. Aid, U.S. aid from the American people.
Oh, we're being nice.
Yeah, we're being nice to people.
We should be nice. We're the nice people of the world.
But what these, and I'm sure Mike talked about this, like LGBTQ, these dance parties and things. If you look at these countries, like these are countries where we want to keep them away from Russia, overthrow the incumbent.
Yes.
And the way to garner support is to. And I really love how they added the Q. That just became so clear to me all of a sudden. If you sponsor LGBTQ, these are outcasts. These are people who feel that they've been marginalized. Then you add a Q, like, oh, wait a minute, I can be queer. I'm different. I'm odd. You bring more people in. Then you can bring the anarchists in.
You can get A. They have the A's in
Oh, yeah,
now,
the
which
A's,
is
I's,
so crazy.
Everything.
But the A's don't even have a dog in the fight.
But that's the point. You want them to come to the party.
Yes.
Come to the party. You're allowed to the party.
That's
and
why
then
it's so long now.
And I saw this, AFD in Germany, this is the extreme right party, and they wanted, to slow or remove immigration. And so now there was a protest against the AFD. They're getting ready to vote now, and there's 100,000 people there. I'm like, wow. I thought, because I know people in Germany, I have friends in Germany. They really are sick and tired of this immigration stuff. So where are these people coming from? And in the news report, right up front, there's a dude in a blonde wig with eyeshadow saying, "We just want to get along. Can't we just be diverse?" I'm like, that's the psyop.
Yes.
He's talking about himself. So he wants to feel included, which, by the way, in America, you can do whatever you want, call yourself whatever you want. People really don't have an issue with that. But they've just taken this and abused these people into their political agendas all over the world. And, of course, it sparked something here in the States. If you look at the Democrat Party, they're going to die on this hill. They're still like, oh, no, LGBTQ, they're taking away our rights, because they know they can mobilize people to do that. And then you can throw in Palestine, all kinds of people.
Did you see the city
group.
council thing in Worcester, Massachusetts yesterday that's gone viral today?
No, which one is
Jamie,
that?
did you see it?
I'm seeing it right now on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, pull this bitch up.
I haven't seen it.
There's a compilation of these people like absolutely freaking out. The best one's the compilation, if you can find the compilation. But it's all these LBGT people show up at this city council meeting to say there's like a trans genocide. It's one of those, dude. We're going to round up in concentration camps.
Yeah, 5 minutes long.
Yeah, just give me, start from the beginning.
Can you wrap up, please?
Yes, I can. If you say that you're afraid of Trump and that's why you don't want the city to be a safe space for trans people, you better prepare for trans people to make this a very unsafe space.
Oh, brother.
I'm shaking right now. I don't want to be here. I'm sorry, am I taking too long pleading for my life?
You remembered how many children I have and that 2 of them are trans.
There it is.
Yeah.
I speak as both the B and the T in the LGBT.
He's both.
I'm multiply disabled. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder that causes me immense physical pain. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I have narcolepsy, and I couldn't drive myself here, so I had to hide from my driver that I was in drag, which is not an easy thing to do in drag.
I do not want to be here. It's
Whoa.
my day off. I do not want to be in your DMs. I do not want to be in your email inboxes. I do not want my creativity writing diss tracks like Kendrick. I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
What?
I want you to listen to me.
bitch.
Let us remember. No, that's enough. So it's like, you made me put glitter on my face, you piece of shit. Because everyone knows when you go to court, you have to have glitter.
These
on your
people,
face.
these people need hugs. They need love. I
They
pray
need
for
love.
them.
Yeah.
The biggest way to psychologically manipulate people is, or there's 3 ways: old people, puppies, and children. And the whole, and I followed this. It started around 2012, not coincidental. When about Smith Month, the Smith Month Act. So that's there was a law that was put in since the Church Commission. You can't propagandize the American people. Defense Department and others went to the government and said, well, like we're on the internet now. We might accidentally, push some propaganda on people. It started with bullying in schools. I know because John Dvorak and I, we followed it on No Agenda. Started with bullying. Then it was we needed anti-bullying laws. And we're literally going like, what happened to sticks and stones will break my bones or punch the bully in his nose? No. Then the teachers, and then we got hate speech laws, not actually laws, but, hate speech punishments. And this kept building up until you guaranteed parents through the American Medical Association, the Pediatric Society, all of these different trade groups, that if you don't transition your child, that child will commit suicide.
Right.
And that is a horrible thing that they've done. Think about these parents who may or may not one day wake up and go, what have I done? What have I done?
Well, someone was talking about this the other day, that this is the real problem, is that so many parents have committed to doing this to their children, and they cannot face the reality of what they've done, and so they're going to dig their heels in forever, and
go
talk
Democrat
about gender-affirming care.
Yes.
Yeah. But the thing is, that's a small percentage of people in the general population.
Thank God.
And thank God. But they're overrepresented in the fact that they make it their whole life, and so they're very loud and very vocal, and then they become a political beach ball. I talk about beach
I
balls
heard you
at a
talk
concert.
about that with Bridget.
That's what
Yeah,
it is. It's
totally.
the political beach balls at a concert. They chuck them up in the air, so we always have something to fight about. So we're not paying attention to like the USAID stuff or a lot of the stuff that's like really important. And this is just a part of this intertangled web of psyops that's been running our culture. I mean, I would say our government, but it's everything, right?
Culture, yes.
So it's the government has established its hooks in us and put fear and law and rules. And the more law and the more rules, the better, because the more likely you're going to break a few of them, and then you're going to shut the fuck up.
Yep.
And they've got these fucking things everywhere. And it's just allowing them to run this mafia business. And there's a bunch of people that are reasonable, educated people that have Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to admit that even their people, their cherished heroes like Obama, was a part of this.
Big
and that
part.
all these people that you think of as progressive Democrats, they were all a part of it. And fortunately today, we have the convenient access to YouTube instantaneously, where you could watch Obama in 2003 say some very MAGA things. Or you could watch Hillary Clinton go more MAGA than MAGA.
About deportations.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And that if you stay, you have to pay a stiff fine. I mean, the whole thing is, it's cyclical, right? Like, this is why the left is now supporting war and censorship. It's not real. It's not that there's a good group of kind, compassionate, educated people and a bunch of fucking buffoons who are racist who want to bring back the Confederate flag.
Yeah.
That's not what's going on.
No.
There's people that are nice, kind people that also understand the value of hard work and reality and kindness and also sternness and rule of law, and you can't just let violent criminals out in the street. And hey, maybe you should do some actual rehabilitation with the fucking billions of dollars you make in the prison industrial complex when there's no rehabilitation, like no real concerted efforts to completely change these people and studies.
It's a mess.
It can be done. It can be done, and it probably could be done with psychedelic drugs. They probably can do some things with people, especially non-violent criminals that are trying to figure out, like, why have I been stealing from people my whole life? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me that unless they're a legitimate psychopath, they have no empathy. There's people that can be kind of woken up to why they're in this horrific pattern of continual abuse in their life, and there's ways to do it. And Rick Perry has been really like brave in this case because he's a former Republican governor of Texas, and
That's right.
and now he's advocating for ibogaine therapy, particularly for veterans, where guys who come over, they've seen the most horrific shit, their brain is in a shambles, and they want to do something, and they have no help in these pills that just dull their mind and make them feel detached from reality, and all these fucking antidepressants and things they give them, and they want to fucking end their life. And they can go and get therapy that it cures 80% of them with one dose, and it's like 95% with 2 doses. It's fucking nuts, man. And we've been hiding this because of the sweeping Schedule I Drug Act of 1970 that was put in place directly by Nixon to go after his political opponents. It was directly put in place to demonize the anti-war movement and demonize the Civil Rights Party and the Black Panthers and anybody who was a problem with the government. So they just said, let's just make all these things that these people are taking on a regular basis completely illegal. Not only just Schedule I, like with no medical use whatsoever, things that people have been using for thousands and thousands of years. And it's all the same shit. It's all psyops. It's all psyops. Have you ever heard of the audience effect? It is a psychological theory that our behavior changes when we know we're being watched. And here's the thing, we are being watched. When you use the internet, data brokers watch and record everything you do online, even if you're using a private browser. But you don't have to become a slave to the digital surveillance state. You can free yourself with ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, 100% of your online activity is rerouted through secure, encrypted servers that hide your IP address. That means you can get to use the internet with real freedom and privacy. It's incredibly fast, it doesn't slow down your streaming or downloading, and it lets you connect instantly to secure servers in 105 countries around the world. ExpressVPN is easy to use. It takes just one click, and it works on all of your devices, even smart TVs. Use it on up to 8 devices at the same time and protect your whole family with just one subscription. And the best part? Podcast listeners can get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN for free at expressvpn.com/Rogan or by tapping the banner. That's expressvpn.com/Rogan or tap the banner. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get 4 free months by scanning the QR code on screen or by clicking the link in the description.
Well, the number one thing that happened around that time, of course, during Kennedy, is we realized that television was a big force. Television and radio.
Oh, yeah, they got that handsome guy.
And if you listen to some of the debates, like it would sound on the radio like Nixon did better. I mean, it's amazing how this worked between radio and television, but then newspapers, we know the intelligence agencies were all writing stories. I mean, you look at CNN, you still see ex-CIA guy shows up. A little story. When I saw you sitting at the inauguration, and I think I texted you, I'm like, dude, I can't believe it. I see you sitting there. You know, texting me American flag emojis and stuff. Like, and you and Trump. I'm like, oh, look at him. He's in a tuxedo. And I thought, so my life in 1983. I was still a teenager, and I grew up in Amsterdam, socialist country. The airwaves were controlled by the government. It was horrible. It was almost like Russia. Your phone was a gray phone, and that was your phone. You couldn't get a different phone. It was illegal to unplug it from the wall. And I was doing pirate radio at a place called Radio Decibel in Amsterdam, and we were playing.
You were Christian Slater.
In a way,
in a way, that movie?
In a way. Oh yeah, yeah. What was that called? What was that movie called?
I don't.
Maybe it was called Pirate Radio.
It was crazy. They were trying to arrest him. Remember?
Well, so we all got arrested several times, and we were playing 12-inch imports from your Chicago warehouse.
You got arrested several times.
Oh yeah. They would always come and arrest us.
How'd they find you?
We literally had the station name on the door. People would come around. We'd be smoking weed or hanging out. You know, we weren't making any money. We were basically paying to do it. You know, we had this huge antenna on the roof.
Did this ever come up when you got hired by MTV? Did they get nervous about that? Like, did they have to do a background check? So this guy's got a record.
No, remind me to tell you my USAID story in a minute. So no, but this is 1983, and I felt it was so. First, I was a gawky, awkward kid. I got tics. You know, I got the wrong hair. I got the wrong moped. Everything's wrong. But on the radio, people were like, "Wow!" And I was doing it in English. You can do that in Amsterdam. People were like, "Wow, it's so cool. You got that black guy on your station." I'm like, "I'm black? Oh, cool." So I was John Holden, the 23-year-old black guy who drives a Harley. But the point was, it was liberating. I could speak my mind, and everything felt so stifling. Now we go forward, 1993, and I'm on MTV. I'm the hair of Generation X. I'm on Z100 in New York, #1 station, and I'm also on the internet. You know, I'd set up NTV.com. It was very, very slim. We had dial-up modems at the time, and it was so restrictive. You can't. They let me do my own material, but they had censorship called a line producer. Like, oh, now we got to burn that segment. You said something bad about Richard Marx. Oh, you said something that was off color about Madonna. Oh, we can't do that. The radio was the same. It was, you know, like read the liner card, you know, and then always end with Z100. And there was a guy at Sun Microsystems in San Francisco, and he said, Adam, I see what you're doing with MTV.com on the web. That's cool. I'm going to send you a computer. So he sends me this big Sun Spark workstation. He said,
what year?
93.
So this is pre-Windows 95. So this is...
Yeah, it's that's
Windows,
right.
what is it, 3.8
Well, this
or something
was
like that?
Solaris OS. It's Unix, basically.
So it wasn't Windows back then, right? Like, what came before Windows 95?
I had a Mac. No, I had an early Apple II.
3.1, that's what it was.
Yeah, 3.1, and an Apple II. I was more Apple guy at the time. And so I hooked it up to my 56K modem, dial in, he says, watch this. And he says, and I'm on the phone with him, he says, watch this. And up on my screen pops a little player, and he's streaming in PC. We didn't have MP3s back then, PCM, pulse code modulation, 9-inch nails. I'm like, this is broadcasting. I'm going to figure out how we use this thing for broadcasting, because think about how we can use this outside of all the systems. And so 2003, now we're 10 years later, I've been very involved with RSS feeds and blogs, and I see my first iPod, and it's like, snap, crackle, pop. Hold on a second. This is amazing. We can combine. This is a radio. This is not a music device. It's radio. So I cobbled together this program that basically takes this RSS feed and then puts a program on. So the show was an album, and then each track was an episode number. And then I immediately start doing a show. What I do is just try to get people involved. That's how Daily Source Code started, because I was trying to get software developers in. And then 3 years later, Steve Jobs is having a private conversation with me about putting this into the iPod and making it official, making a podcasting thing in iTunes. And I'm like, this is so perfect, because now you have this RSS feed, which you control. No one else can control what you do with your RSS feed. And anybody can slurp that up and subscribe to your radio show. And then 20 years later, I see the President of the United States wrapping up his campaign with Joe Rogan on a podcast, completely being himself, being a dude by the way, props for you sticking to your guns. I love that you did that. Now it's got to be here. No restrictions on time.
Well, he didn't impose any. But he was more than willing to do it exactly how I do it.
He understands it. But at that moment, then I see you sitting there. I'm like, we just broke the elite messaging machine. Phase 1 complete.
All because of you, dog.
No, you dog, man. All glory to God. I think I was just used.
I always give you your props. I think you were the first.
I was just a vessel. It makes sense to me now.
Well, I'm just a vessel too. I think that's the case with all of it.
Absolutely.
I say that to the guys at my comedy club. They're always like so thankful that I built this comedy club. I'm like, I think this thing built itself. I think it was just I was a thing that it did through me. It caught me because it knew that I was capable of doing it and impulsive enough and brash enough to say, fuck it, let's just dump a bunch of money in this spot and see what happens.
You were given gifts.
I was given gifts.
And you stuck with your gifts. And I know you're a very generous guy. I know you help a lot of people with not monetary necessarily, but just helping them, getting them on their feet. Even Parker, I'm like, can I bring this kid? He's a big fan. You're like, absolutely, bring him in. You're a gracious guy. And so when you get whatever word it is to build a comedy club, you did.
I think you have to do that. I think that's the universe is testing you, and if you pay attention to yourself, you'll feel like what's the right thing to do. Like, what's the thing? What is the greedy, impulsive thing to do? What is like the miserly thing to do? Save it all. It's my money. Save it all. That's
that usually doesn't end well for those people.
It's bad for you too, because I always talk about this in terms of careers, like, and I really try to put this in young comics' minds. There's an impulse that you will have when someone's doing better than you, and you'll be angry at them. It is a bitter, pathetic, jealous, normal instinct that people have.
The enemy talking to you.
It's just you have to recognize what that is. What that is you have a desire to be doing the same thing. This person is doing this thing. They are in the movie. They are on the TV show. They are headlining at the club, and you feel bad because it's not you. So you decide that they are bad. And so you start looking at them as a source of negativity towards you, and you don't do all the logical, objective reasoning that allows you to go, oh, no, they didn't do anything wrong. It's just me. And then those people who get really super big and famous oftentimes get very defensive and very elitist because they do understand that people are mad at them now. So then they're like, fuck those people. Those people are fucking losers. And it's bad for everybody. It's bad for everybody. The correct way to do it is to go, wow, look at what this person has accomplished. That's fucking amazing. That's inspiring. I want to do something like that with my life.
Which is what America used to be. People would come to him. Yeah,
I think it is. I think it is.
It's been covered up. It's been papered over by media, basically. That's why I'm so happy that we've broken through that elite messaging system. The way I was raised is in America, you can look at the guy with the Rolls Royce or the Cadillac or whatever and go, I want that, and you can be that. Yes. And we've kind of devolved into it's international now, into a victim mentality. There's good and evil. I mean,
it's just a ploy. It's, again, the same thing as fluoride in the water. It's a fucking psyop. It's a ploy. And it's a way to keep us, instead of empowering people to recognize that all these people that are successful are inspiration. That's what they are. They're fuel for you. You can use them. Whatever that person is singing at the Grammys, when Kendrick Lamar's doing the halftime show, when someone wins a fight, that's supposed to be inspiration. That's a fuel, and you can use it correctly. You can fuck your whole life up by paying attention to other people and comparing yourself in a negative way. This is part of the problem with kids and social media. Because kids are supposed to see, like, oh, look at Bobby. He's nice to everybody, and everybody likes Bobby. Be like Bobby. Like, look at Mark. He's fucking awesome at the guitar, and everybody wants to go see him play. I want someone to come see me do something. I wish I was as good at something as Mark is at guitar. And that's what's supposed to, like, raise us all up.
But instead, we see 1,000 followers and likes on someone blasting somebody in a funny way in a video.
Yeah.
This is a big part of the problem.
But sometimes funny way blasting is important, too, because that's my line of work. Like, you got to talk shit.
You're a professional, Joe. You're a professional.
Yeah, but how do you become a professional? You start off as an amateur. You start off talking shit.
We can't all be a comedian or a comic. We just can't.
There's a lot more can than you think. I think a lot more. There's a lot of people out there that have the inclination that just don't get that spark, which is also one of the things we're trying to do with the club, which is also why we have 2 nights of open mic nights.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we want to make it accessible. We want to make this is like a place where there's a real path. You can work on your act, and you're going to see guys like on a daily basis, guys like Ron White and Shane Gillis, and there's people coming in and out of town that are doing my podcast. They're like the best of the best in the world. Yeah, and they're coming to the club.
Oh, this is the center of the universe now for comedy. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Really, and again, I think this place, it built itself. I think I just had to do it. I was like,
I just got to tell you, no. God loves you, Joe. He is at work in you. He's all over you and has been that way for a long, long time. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, whatever it is, I'm listening.
You'll accept it. Yeah,
I accept it and I listen and I go with it.
Yeah.
But I think it all, like, too many things had to happen. Like, if you want to believe in fate, if you really want to believe in fate, I should believe in fate. Because especially with, like, this move here, too many things had to happen in line. It had to be the pandemic, and it had to be me with young kids who just was very uncomfortable with the direction that LA was going. And then it had to be the George Floyd riots and the lockdowns. And then I had to come to Texas and go, oh, there's other ways that people live. And I'd known you for a long time, and you lived here, and you spoke very highly. And then my good friend Gary Clark Jr., he came here like before the pandemic, and I remember talking to him on the phone. I'm like, why did you move back to Texas? He's like, man, I just cannot fuck with those people in LA. Right. And Gary's like the realest dude I know. It's like one of the realest. Like, he doesn't give a fuck about fame, that guy cares about playing that fucking guitar and playing songs as good as he can. And that guy just locks himself up in a studio. He's got a studio at his house.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Locks himself up in there for 12 hours a day, and it's just, that guy only gives a fuck about the art. Like, he's about the craft. And like, so all the bullshit that came along with living in Hollywood, like, he would just come hang out at the Comedy Store all the time. That was just because it was like, oh, you guys are real. Like, I can hang with you. We just be cracking up and hanging. So when he came out here, it's like, fuck. And then Ron White came out here. I'm like, God damn it. And then he was like, oh, I fucking love it. It's fucking airports.